another episode of our, or not episode, but another division reveal with the Football League. I'm Bond here. I'm here with Brian. Say hello.
How's it going, guys?
And Cooley. Say hello.
What's up, fellas?
And we've got our first user, our first owner that we're going to reveal tonight. Priest is with us. Priest, how you doing tonight?
How's it going, guys? Doing good.
Doing well. Doing well. I know you're excited to get to it, so we won't hold you off any longer. Brian, why don't you go ahead and do the team that Priest will be taking over for Madden 21?
Okay, so we're going to be starting off with Priest, like Bond just mentioned, and the division that we're going to be doing tonight is the NFC West. NFC West. So Priest probably knows who he's taking. Then he's going to have the LA Rams. So LA Rams for him. He came in late last cycle, coming over from some of the other grown folks leagues. So this will be his first full cycle with TFL. Bond, why don't we hear a little bit about some of the key players here for the Rams?
All right. So the Rams, Super Bowl losers a couple of years ago, and then last year, I think they missed the playoffs last year in real life, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah. So missed the playoffs. A lot of roster turnover. They were one of those teams that went all in with the rookie quarterback contract. And then they gave their quarterback the big money. What's his name? I can't even think of their quarterback.
Jared Goff.
Jared Goff. There you go. Gave him the big money, and they've had to move on for some players. So this roster looks a lot different than it did 3 years ago or 2 years ago. Still Aaron Donald there. The acquisition of Jalen Ramsey last year, he's still there, though I don't think that they've signed him to his extension yet. So that'll be something that Priest will have to decide to do in the or during the cycle. Cooper Kupp, the highest rated receiver at 89 overall. Andrew Whitworth, left tackle. You got Johnny Hecker, the quarterback punter extraordinaire, who I love. Robert Woods. So there's still some really good players. Obviously, Jared Goff, the quarterback there, he's only rated 76 overall. And I know, well, we'll get into Priest's play style a little bit from what we know from last year, but looks like some offensive firepower. The big absence, obviously, no more Todd Gurley. He signed with the Falcons after he was cut. They have Malcolm Brown as the highest rated running back. Couple of good tight ends in Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett. But this isn't as star-laden a roster as it was a couple of years ago. So I don't know what the cap situation is going to look like in the game, but a lot of roster turnover from the last 2 years, and we'll see what that cap looks like. Cooley, what do you have to say?
Priest was with us one season. He took over the Chargers from Sprite, I believe. He went 9-7, so his only season TFL was a winning season. He did not make the playoffs at 9-7, which was probably a disappointment. But I've been in the same division with Priest and OMFL, where I think he's probably a Packers fan. So he's branching out, moving to the Rams. Maybe he just likes teams that have yellow. So I guess we'll find out why he chose them in a minute when he gets to talk. But yeah, that's pretty much what I got. I've played Priest several times in these leagues, and it's always a good battle. He generally likes that deep ball, so we'll see if that continues with Goff.
Yes, Priest, why don't you tell us a little bit about why the Rams were on your list and what you're excited about for this cycle and this team?
Well, the Rams were my third choice, which is cool. I picked them just because there's a lot of room for improvement. I like to build on my team, and I think there's a lot of spaces to build on this team and make it better. I might not be there for the first couple seasons. We'll see, but once we get a couple rookies on the team, especially on offense, I like, and I'm gonna need a running back. I don't think we have one right now.
Well, it's interesting. They did draft Cam Akers. I know, Bonds, you said that Malcolm Brown was the top-rated running back. They do have Cam Akers, who was successful in college. I believe he was a second round, maybe a third-round pick.
I think he was a second rounder.
Yeah, so there might be some room there for you. From a defensive standpoint, the Rams have been seen to set up for both a 4-3 and a 3-4, kind of run that multiple D over the past couple of years. What's your style of play there, and how do you foresee turning that defense into a powerhouse?
Well, it all depends who I'm playing. But I coach myself like semi-pro football, so I'm a 3-4 guy all the way. But again, it depends what you have on that side of the ball. Like I got Donald, so I would think a 3-4 would be easier to start with faster linebackers. But we'll have to see what the game gives me.
You know, it's interesting looking at their draft picks. So I know they drafted Terrell Lewis out of Alabama, who's a pure pass rushing outside linebacker. He's a made for 3-4. He drops back. He dropped back every once in a while at Alabama, but he was a pass rushing terror. 67 overall, but he's really fast. He's probably going to have some pretty good finesse pass move ratings. So might be a guy where you can find some pass rushing situations. And they do have Cam Akers at 73 overall, only 90 speed but 94 acceleration. And like I said, he was a former 5-star prospect. I think he might have been the number 1 overall prospect in his class. Originally to Tennessee and then transferred to Florida State, or decommitted and went to Florida State. So he's going to be a good young player. They drafted Van Jefferson as well, wide receiver. So there's a lot of young talent. I thought they had a really good draft. I like their draft a lot. There's a lot of talent there, and you mentioned that, like in having some room to build the roster a little bit.
Yeah, their defense is going to be fun to build off. That's going to be my first area. Get that nice and solid and solidified.
One interesting thing here, and it remains to be seen if this is how it's going to be in Madden. They usually do have draft pick trades for like that first season in the game. And I know the Rams dealt their first round draft pick to the Jaguars as part of the Ramsey deal for the upcoming season. So it'll be interesting to see, without a first round pick, how that impacts your rebuild there, because you kind of talked about, maybe being a couple years before you're as competitive as you would like to be.
Yeah. I didn't know their first round draft pick was gone, but I'm sure I can work something out.
I forgot. I know they traded the one last year. I didn't know they had 2 firsts in that Ramsey trade.
Yeah, they had 2 firsts as part of the Ramsey trade. So again, what was that, Priest?
What's Ramsey's overall in the game?
He's 94 overall.
Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, he's pretty good. He's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's looking at it. It's an interesting roster. We talked a lot with other teams about how it looks with depth and everything. There's not a lot of high. I mean, obviously Aaron Donald is one of the 99s in the game. Ramsey, Cooper Kupp, Andre Whitworth, Johnny Hecker, Robert Woods. There's some pretty good talent there. Where this team is probably going to struggle is that depth. You get onto the second page on the EA ratings, and those 60s start coming up really quick. So the 2 deep doesn't look like it's going to be all that good. But the starting depth chart should be pretty solid. And again, they're making the playoffs Super Bowl a couple years ago, and then missing the playoffs. But I think they still had a pretty good record in a really difficult division. So that's going to be an interesting process to structure that roster. Are you expecting to be able to compete in the first year, Priest?
Well, you got to let me know who's in my division, and I can let you know.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah. Definitely depends who's in the division.
Yeah.
But I thought I played good last season. Like, I like these rules we have here. It makes you, like, you really got to think your strategy, like, before doing anything, or you're going to get screwed. So now that I actually get to build my team to the way you guys do it, I think it's going to be a lot funner too.
Yeah, that's one thing. We've got a lot of guys that are in their first full cycle this year, or played a couple seasons last year, or whatever. So it's always interesting to see how guys choose to build their team. What decisions they make, and obviously with their play style, you didn't really have a chance to build your roster last cycle around your play style. You just kind of went with what you had. So that'll be interesting to see.
Give it a solid team though. It was fun at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? Priest, you have any other thoughts about your team?
No, I can't wait it's going to be fun. Like you guys said, I was hoping for the Packers, but it's cool I didn't get them. I got them 2 other times. But it's going to be fun doing like Packers are totally different than the Rams, so it's
Yeah.
gonna be fun.
And that's another, actually brings me to another question. So we have got some guys that love using their favorite team. I'm a Panthers fan. I've been the Panthers almost every cycle since we started this league.
Yeah.
And some guys hate using their favorite team because they feel like they're too subjective and they can't like let go of guys. So do you think that you'll is there a different mindset using a team that maybe you don't care about in real life as opposed to using your favorite team?
Well, I know there's at least one name that you mentioned that I'll get a first round pick back that I won't mind giving away. So,
Yeah.
like, so I definitely do that for sure. But no, like Donald, like I'm a user. I don't use her like linebackers. I use her defensive tackles and ends. So that's kind of one of the reasons I picked the Rams too. It's gonna be playing with Donald.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I've traditionally been a D-line outside linebacker, like a 3-4 user as well. And so, like picking teams over the years, it's always been kind of okay. Who am I going to use? Or this past cycle, I started switching to linebacker a little bit just to change it up and try to learn a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But I do know
We play all my
picking Donald is big.
Yeah, I usually switch on the line, all four of them.
Priest, did you have any chance to try out the beta?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
No.
I'm curious what your thoughts were, if you did, what your thoughts were about the new defensive line pass rushing stuff. I don't know if anybody, I don't know of anybody that tried out that user's defensive line that had the beta. So I know I didn't try it out at all.
I know, like I read some like cool things, like you can't, like once you do one thing, the AI or whatever is gonna key on that. Like you can't do it again. You got to keep mixing it up, which is cool.
Yeah,
I like it.
That's going to be interesting to see, obviously, with the more dominant pass rushers in the league with Donald and Khalil Mack and what their sack numbers look like, users versus the CPU pass rush.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, you guys got any other questions for Priest?
No, I think we can move on to a couple of other teams of the people who aren't here yet.
All right, Priest, you're welcome to hang out, and we usually wrap back around after we've unveiled all the teams and talk about the division. So if you want to hang around with us and shoot the shit, you're more than welcome to. If you need to get off, then that's all right as well.
Yeah, I'm cool. I'll stay here and
awesome.
listen to you guys.
All right.
Okay, so good.
So that wraps up the Rams. Priest is taking over the LA Rams, our first team in our NFC West division reveal. So Brian, why don't you take over and talk about the next team?
Okay, so our next team's going to Shiloh, and Shiloh Bad has been a part of this league probably 6 or 7 years now.
Yeah, I think since the beginning.
Since he's one of our longest term members, and I think he's been the same team for at least the last 4 or 5 years. And so it's no surprise that he is going to be the Seattle Seahawks again this year. He always takes his favorite team. He's the only Seahawks fan, and I think he was the only person that actually put Seahawks on the list this year. So he's going to be back to Seahawks again. Let's hear a little bit about that team.
All right. So obviously the Seattle Seahawks led by their quarterback Russell Wilson, 97 overall. Bobby Wagner, 98 overall. I don't think they have the trade in yet. Yeah, they don't have on the EA roster, on the website anyway, the trade for Jamal Adams. So they acquired Jamal Adams for, somebody remind me, it was 2 first-round picks, a safety, and like a third-round pick or something like that?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, it was a big haul for the New York Jets. So, Jamal Adams, one of the highest rated safeties in the game. I believe he's in the 90s as well, so he'll be on this roster. Tyler Lockett, 88 overall. Let me see what they put. DK Metcalf, 79 overall. I know Shiloh dominated with DK Metcalf that last season when we moved to all pro from all Madden. So, again, a defense, this team is kind of in transition. It's been a defensive team for a long time, but now they've got 5 of their top 10 players are on the offensive side with Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, Chris Carson, Greg Olsen, who signed a 1-year deal, Dwayne Brown at left tackle, and then Carlos Hyde. So a little bit more balance for this team than in the past. It's obviously not the Legion of Boom anymore, but they've got Shaquille Griffin at 84 overall, Quentin Dunbar at 79 overall, who escaped facing any charges from that robbery stuff apparently. And then Trey Flowers at 77 overall. So a pretty good defensive backfield. Hardly any pass rush to speak of. Who knows if they're going to bring back Jadeveon Clowney, but that's something that Charlotte will surely want to bolster once he gets a hold of this roster, either through free agency or the draft. Cooley, why don't you tell us a little bit about Shiloh, his information from last year?
Yeah, Shiloh has been a long-term member, like I said. Last cycle was not his best. He struggled early. I think he kind of got had a little better ending, but his overall record was 37 and 75. Only had one winning season and didn't make the playoffs this cycle. But he has been a person that's made the playoffs in the past. I mean, obviously, I think he's in, where is he, Taiwan, and he makes it work to schedule every time. So, I mean, it's always, you know, he should get rewarded with it, whatever team he wants. So the guy that's that dedicated to playing in a Madden league. So pretty. I look forward to him. Near the end of the cycle, he started getting a lot better. It's going to be interesting to see what he does with Russell Wilson near the end of that cycle, because this one kind of caught up to him at the end. So he'll have to do that. That'll have to come up one a little bit earlier this time.
Yeah, I'm still upset with Shiloh. He stole that quarterback from me at the end of the cycle and never recovered. But no, seriously, he's had cycles where he's been 500 or above almost every season in the playoff hunt, and he's had cycles where he just hasn't really had as much success. And last year was one of those cycles. I think that he's got a pretty good team here. Like Bon mentioned, he was very dangerous with DK Metcalf, and I think having Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams, back there, gets some nice core on the defense. So, it'll be interesting to see how the cycle falls for him. Russell Wilson is Russell Wilson, so he can always have success with him at quarterback.
Yeah, we have, I don't know what, maybe 4 or 5 guys in the league, probably not even that many, who they're going to get their top team every time because of their dedication, how long they've been in the league. Shiloh's every year, he's not as big on like the content stuff, but he plays every game. He schedules games at like 3 a.m. his time. It's pretty nuts, his dedication, considering the time zone restrictions. But he's going to be the Seahawks for as long as he wants them in our league, I'm sure, for as long as he wants to play. So I'm interested to see what he does with this roster. It's an old roster. There's not a lot of young talent. Bobby Wagner, Russell Wilson. I think Tyler Lockett's in his late 20s, but Greg Olson's he's only playing 1 year in real life. We'll see what happens in Madden. But KJ Wright, like there's a lot of old players on this roster, so it could be a chance to turn it over really quickly. And again, I think he's had some up and down seasons and up and down cycles. I think his success is dependent a lot on what he's able to do in the offseason. I know he has to miss a lot of the offseason because of the extreme time difference, so he's not always able to get in during free agency, or he missed drafts frequently, and then kind of at the luck or the hands of the CPU and what they do.
Yeah, you brought up a good point about the age. I think that's what makes that trade for Jamal Adams very interesting. I'm not sure if they signed him to an extension or not as part of that deal, but being able to have him long term almost makes those missing first round picks kind of palatable for him. So, I mean, he's definitely, you're right, he's definitely going to have a little bit of rebuild ahead of him, and maybe it happens a little bit sooner than it happened this last cycle. It seemed like he kind of tried to put it off a little bit by trying to make it work with the guys he had, and once he kind of completed the rebuild there at the end, that's when he had his winning season, which was the very last season of the cycle, I believe. So, he definitely has the potential if he can commit to the rebuild and get that team turned around quickly.
Sometimes that's just hard to do with your favorite team because you're attached to those guys. So if you can part with some of your favorite players you can rebuild. If not, you hang on to them 1 or 2 years too long, and it costs you.
Yeah, Shiloh's not a big, he doesn't trade very much. Like I said, he kind of builds what he can with, how available he is and how much he can do in the offseason. But honestly, I don't remember him ever making a trade uh, in all the cycles that he's been with us. I don't know that he ever
Yeah,
has.
I think you might be right. I know I've tried, but I don't know if he's ever actually made a trade.
Yeah, yeah. So he's going to do his thing, and he's got his Seahawks again. You guys have any final thoughts? Priest, you have any thoughts about the Seahawks in your division, just the team in general?
Seahawks, they're always tough. I know when I was on the Packers and I play them in my other league, I dread it because I never win. But I don't remember playing Shiloh last year, so hopefully we got some good battles coming.
Yeah, he's we really focus on like our style of sim play, which if you're listening, you probably know what that is and how strict we can be at times. And Shiloh fits the mold of how we like guys to play. He mixes up really well, and he when he has success, when he's able to build his roster, he really he has a good scheme that he runs and his style of play. He likes to control the ball, and I'm interested to see what he can do with Russell Wilson. And a better rated DK Metcalf. Well, I think he's a bit underrated in this version. His speed should probably be a little bit higher, and I don't know, my opinion, but it'll be really interesting to see what he can do in a really tough NFC West. Traditionally in our league, the NFC West is one of the more difficult divisions. Just a lot of good teams and good players in that league.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to playing DK Metcalf. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. You guys have any final thoughts, Cooley or Brian?
No,
Yeah, let's move
I'm
on.
ready for the next one.
All right, so that'll wrap it up for the Seahawks. Again, Shiloh, one of our longtime members, taking over the Seahawks for whatever the 18th year in a row or whatever it is. So, Brian, I'll let you take over, and we'll move on to our next team.
Okay, so the next team that we're going to announce is the Arizona Cardinals. I always have to think about the city or state now because with so many teams moving, I have to make sure, okay, is it still Arizona? It's Arizona Cardinals. It's going to go to our former Patriots owner, who is Big Boy Dill. He's not going to be joining us tonight, but he is going to be taking over the Arizona Cardinals this year. And so let's go and think about some of these key players. Cardinals were one of our it was a fairly popular team, surprisingly, at least surprising for me, from some of our people. So I'd love to hear some of these top players to get a better understanding why they made them so popular.
Yeah, well, I think Kyler Murray is probably one of the big reasons they're so popular. The number one draft pick from a couple of years ago, 91 speed, 92 acceleration out of a quarterback is always a lot of fun. 90 throw power as well. But they had a big offseason. So obviously the trade for DeAndre Hopkins, 98 overall top receiver. They still have Larry Fitzgerald, 83 overall. They traded for Kenyon Drake in the middle of the season, who had a great end of the season run with them. Chandler Jones at 95 overall. Patrick Peterson's still there, 88 overall. Buda Baker, 86 overall at safety. Byron Murphy, another corner at 79. Christian Kirk at 78 overall. First round pick Isaiah Simmons. They have him listed as a strong safety. I think he's going to play a little bit more in the box, like kind of a safety linebacker hybrid. So that's going to be really interesting for Big Boy to see how he utilizes Isaiah Simmons and that versatility. But I think he's 78 overall. He might be the highest rated rookie that was in this past draft class. 93 speed, 93 acceleration. So a really interesting roster. It's pretty good depth throughout. Obviously, they were terrible a couple of years ago. And then in real life, what's the guy? The coach. I'm blanking on his name from Texas Tech.
Arians?
No, the new coach, Cliff Kingsbury, taking over, and moving that team to an air raid offense. So it's a pretty fun offensive book to play with. But a good roster, some good top end talent, pretty good depth, and still with some room to move. Obviously, they're out a first round pick. Or no, did they even trade a first-round pick in the Hopkins trade? I think it was just a second.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it was a second and David Johnson or something like that.
Yep.
So probably, I think, still with their first-round pick. a good team to build around, a really young roster. We talked about the age of the Seahawks. This is a really young roster outside of really Patrick Peterson and Larry Fitzgerald. Everyone else is within their first 4 or 5 years. Maybe you have a couple of second contract guys, but a lot of rookie contract guys. So there's the roster for the Arizona Cardinals and Big Boy Dill, which is a fun name to say. Cooley, what do you have for us about Big Boy?
Yeah, I think didn't he join like after the first season or near the end of the first? Like he wasn't here the first season, but he was here most of the rest of it. I think.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He his total record last cycle was 34-71. He had one winning season. He did get to the playoffs and had a 2-1 playoff record, so he made it to the division um, championship game. I guess if he won 2 games. So
Yeah.
pretty good. Not bad. I'm sure he would have rather had better seasons, but the one winning season he made the most of it. Almost got to a Super Bowl. So it'd be interesting to see what he can do. That Cardinals roster is pretty interesting. One thing that I probably wouldn't like about that team is I would have to draft a lot of linemen on both sides of the ball is probably
Yeah.
where they're the weakest. And so that's not always fun to draft those, but it's necessary sometimes. So, if you can make yourself do that, that looks like a team that could, they definitely have some pieces that I think to start to compete. But, when you have the Rams and the Niners in the division, it's a little tough.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
and
The offensive and defensive lines are pretty weak. Just looking through this roster, not very good. So yeah, that'll be a big rebuild for him, or try to not rebuild but build up the lines on both sides.
yeah, People Joe was interesting last cycle. He was very streaky. It seemed he had some seasons where he came out of the gate hot. I remember playing him, and he was always a tough challenge. And then it seemed like he would lose like 3 or 4 very close games on a row, and then kind of fall back to like 500. And I know that some of the sim seasons he really had some subpar sim seasons, and the Patriots. I feel like are always tough. Tom Brady doesn't last very long as a viable quarterback in Madden. He seems to regress off a cliff after the first season or he retires. So yeah, I think he had a little bit of a challenge with the Patriots last year. It'll be interesting to see with this team. It's kind of the exact opposite. It's young, up and coming, and it will be definitely be interesting to see what he does with Fitzgerald and Peterson. Peterson always seems to be the most common traded player, I feel like, every cycle.
Yeah.
And if he kind of hedges his bets up to the first season, gets rid of some of these old guys and really plays for the future, I think that team can be very, very dangerous.
Yeah, I don't know that there's going to be much of a market for Larry Fitzgerald. He's probably only going to play one season and retire in the game anyway. I think he's 40 now or something like that. But yeah, Patrick Peterson is that guy that's always on the trade block, and then somebody sends a pick for him, and he has a really good year, and they usually make the playoffs, and then he kind of falls off from there. So I think if Bloop were here, I know he was the Patriots and OMFL, and he always talked about the challenges with rebuilding that roster. And missing the first season that Big Boy missed, not having maybe the first season to help work on that. He was kind of fighting an uphill battle, it seemed like, all cycle, to try to find a replacement quarterback for Brady, and then try to inject some youth into that roster, and then playing in a pretty tough division with Austin and Vin Moss, and who else was in the AFC East? Ross with the Dolphins, who all had a lot of success throughout the cycle. So, yeah, I'm interested. Another guy, our first full cycle, he'll be here for his first full cycle, though I think we got to see a little bit over the seasons of what his team building looked like and his ability to put a roster together. So, the Cardinals are a fun team. I know B had a lot of fun with them last year, building around all that speed that they have with Kyler Murray, and he added Hollywood Brown and all these other guys. But should be interesting to see what direction he takes him. If he likes Kyler Murray, if he likes that scrambling kind of passer, or if he looks to maybe move on early from him and find somebody else.
Yeah, and I think the one spot that in real life you're probably looking at the Cardinals and saying, okay, like I'm fine with what they got there. But in Madden, I think it's going to be a little bit of a different story is that running back position.
Yeah.
Kenny and Drake, had a good ending to the season. He's not necessarily rated the greatest, it looks like, from a perspective here. And, he's kind of on the edge of starting to regress after the first couple seasons. So if there's any place on offense that he probably needs to change it up, is probably the running back position there, because it really seems like everywhere else, other than what Coley mentioned, offensive line, and that offense is primed for basically the rest of the cycle almost.
Yeah, it's set up really well in some areas, but still gives you a chance to build it in your image in other areas, which is always a fun thing. Priest, you have any thoughts about the Cardinals? I don't know. I just want to see if you bring you in if you feel like you wanted to say anything.
Yeah, I haven't played that guy either, so it's going to be interesting. I know they have a lot of speed, like you guys said. Again, I'll just be focusing on my defense, I think, the first couple of years.
Yeah. All right. Well, go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say that seems to be the common theme here for these non-Rams teams is a lot of firepower on the offensive side. We're going to get the 49ers here. They made the Super Bowl. Everyone knows their offensive style. But the Seahawks and the Cardinals here, both have a lot of some really good offensive players. And, the other teams in the division, it's really going to be trying to play, work on the defense and trying to, counteract what these teams can do on the offensive side.
I think the Cardinals are interesting to me too because of the playbook situation. The air raid, the run and shoot has always been seen as kind of a cheesy offense in video games because it's probably a little bit easier, or the concepts within that are really difficult to stop in Madden with slants and drags and verticals and all that stuff. So it's always interesting to me when someone takes now with Cliff Kingsbury there. If someone takes the Cardinals, do they stick with that playbook, or do they try to incorporate what we have always considered like more sim aspects of playbooks? Because you can't, there's some leagues, and we've had these rules before where you can only run a certain play or a certain formation so many times, and we've kind of gone away from that. But some guys still get upset if somebody's in the shotgun all game, and that's what the Cardinals do. They don't play under center. They're in the shotgun all game with 3, 4, 5 wide. So. I'm intrigued to see what Big Boy does, and if he sticks with that philosophy, or if he tries to bring in some more of the traditional sets and formations.
Yeah, and especially with some of the depth they have at the wide receiver position too. Last year, what was it? Andy and Isabella was the rookie.
Yeah.
And he had some big games. Obviously, you mentioned Hopkins. They brought in Fitzgerald, and I'm blanking on their fourth wide receiver, Christian Kirk. Yeah,
Christian Kirk. Yeah.
So they definitely have some depth at the wide receiver position that if you wanted to go with that 4 wide, 3 wide, 4 wide consistently, he has the talent to do so.
Yeah, and
Kirk and Isabella were crazy in both our leagues. They're really good. They really got high overalls by the end, and now if you have them with Hopkins, you got a lot of weapons or something that you can, maybe a trade piece. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with the cards.
Well, Andy Isabella's 95 speed, 93 acceleration. The new change of direction attribute that they added, which I think took over agility or something like that. 89 change of direction, and then I'm going to get to his pass catching stuff. He's let's see, 78 short route, 78 mid route, 77 deep route. So he's pretty balanced. 81 spectacular catch, 78 catch. So he's he's a pretty good, well rated. He's only 72 overall, but like you said, in terms of those Madden ratings and what matters for the game, he's a really underrated player. And I know B loved having him with all his speed in the slot when he had Hollywood Brown, and he had somebody else that was really fast on his roster when he was designing his offense. So. Yeah, there's a lot of talent on the Cardinals team, so I'm really interested to see how Big Boy does with the talent, with probably a little bit more roster, or a roster with a little bit more talent, and definitely a lot more youth than what he had last year.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
The thing with Isabella is, what is his release going to be? Because remember, this cycle, the press rating is supposed to matter a whole lot more. You get dominant press wins, so that's what you're going to have to deal with the Cardinals. Is you really can't match up their speed. So
And
you're going to have to hope that you can either
me
get quick pressure or press them.
And for those who don't recognize that beautiful voice, that is Smace joining us. Smace, welcome to the show. Snuck in on us.
I was listening, but I definitely played the Cardinals, and I held B to his lowest point total for a while, but obviously that speed still won the game for him.
Yeah, and speaking of that release rating, he's got a 60 release rating. So, like you mentioned, Smace, if they do, which they say they will, if they do make that press rating a lot more impactful, then that's something that Isabella is going to struggle with a little bit. But then you got DeAndre Hopkins, who's going to beat every press, and so that roster's just really well constructed. I like it
for the first year.
Right. All right. Well, I think that wraps up the Cardinals as well. Unless you guys have any other final thoughts.
No.
All right. Let's go to our fourth and final team.
We're on the last team of the night.
Yep, for this division. So go ahead, Brian. Take it over.
Okay, and we were hoping JLM might be able to join us. It doesn't look like he's been able to come in, unfortunately. So he is going to be our fourth and final team. He's going to be the 49ers for the second straight year. He was 49ers last year, had some great seasons there. Couldn't quite get it all together in the playoffs. Let Coley kind of give out the whole details there, but I think he's trying to come back and finish business with that team. And this team was definitely one of the most popular teams from the team choices standpoint. Was on a lot of people's lists for obvious reasons. Bond, let's hear about some of those players.
Yeah. So, like you said, a very popular choice and a pretty stacked roster. I'll just kind of go top to bottom. George Kittle at 98 overall. Believe he's the top-rated tight end in the game. Richard Sherman's still kicking at whatever age he is, 36, whatever it is, 92 overall. They acquired Trent Williams from Washington in the offseason to replace who was their tackle that retired or that left?
Buckner?
I don't know. I'm blanking on whoever it was, but they added a left tackle, Trent Williams, 92 overall, Nick Bosa, 89 overall, Fred Warner, 87, Eric Armstead, 86 overall, D Ford, 85 overall. Like, the defense is just loaded with talent. The offense has a little bit more room to grow. When Kyle Juszczyk, your fullback, is your second highest rated player on offense, usually not a great thing, but he is 86 overall, super versatile. Raheem Mostert, 84 overall, who I think JLM really liked last cycle, if I remember right, because of that 95 speed. And then Jimmy Garoppolo, who's probably going to be the bane of the 49ers' existence. I think for only one more year, though, with that contract. So he's 83 overall. So a little bit of room to grow for the offense. The defense is just loaded with talent up and down at every level. So, again, we mentioned a very popular team, rightfully so, really highly rated and really good depth across the roster as well. Cooley, why don't you tell us a little bit about JLM's his information from last year?
JLM had a very good cycle with the Niners last cycle. His overall record was 61-51, and that was the fourth best record in the TFL. He had 4 winning seasons. He was 3-2 in the playoffs. Won all 3 of those. That last 2 losses. But anyway, he lost the Super Bowl to the Browns in our last season, so he made it there. So I'm sure he's looking to build on that. But it's interesting to when I was going through those and thinking that, you all these guys, the sim seasons probably add to the losses here uh, for a lot of guys. But
Yeah.
61 and 51 doesn't seem like a dominant. Doesn't seem like it's dominant, but that was better than anybody's record in the AFC, and it was the fourth best in the entire cycle. So, pretty good. He's a good player. He's got one of the best teams in the game. We'll talk about. We'll make our predictions in a minute, so I'll save it for that. But that's he's got he'll be strong there.
Yeah, and I think looking at his record, I think he was kind of hurt too by probably being in one of the tougher divisions in the NFC. And the NFC overall was just a tough conference last year. But he had both B and Riley as the Rams, B as the Cardinals, who were at 500, were above, it seemed like, every play season as well. Not to mention you had Jump as the Bears, you had Bond and the Panthers, Clutch as the Falcons, you and the Cowboys. The Eagles owners were generally doing good. There's a lot of teams that were finishing above 500 in that conference. So that kind of season-wise, that 61-51 is probably a little bit better than that record might appear.
Well, I forgot to mention, because we talked about this before when Riley had his, he won the second most games, had the second best record. So the second and fourth best records in TFL last cycle were in the same division. So, those were definitely battles when the Niners and the Rams played.
Yeah, I had a lot of games against the NFC West playing JLM. I don't think I beat him at all last cycle. We always had really close games. But he runs a really unique offense, or he did with the Niners last year, which I'm sure he'll come back to. That's really difficult to stop. He's good in the run game, and then times play action really well. And that last season, I think everybody had this, but when we went to All Pro, he started slinging the ball around the field a little bit more and opening up his offense that way. And I think that's maybe when he had his best season. So he was a really talented user and does a really good job building his roster again to his liking. To create some success for himself.
Yeah, Don, you mentioned that he liked Mostert, and Mostert's coming in this cycle rated much better.
Yeah.
Just from an overall perspective than he started off last cycle. So if he goes with that, run first offense from the start, kind of how he started last cycle, and using Mostert in that capacity, I think that he's going to be a lot more dangerous from the start than maybe he was last cycle. And that's something to watch out for as well. The other thing you mentioned, fullback, I can never pronounce his name.
Juszczyk, yeah.
Juszczyk, whatever. In real life, he's versatile. He's one of the most versatile players in the NFL from an offense standpoint. Just can be used in a lot of different ways. Madden doesn't really capture that all too well. It's a little bit more difficult to take advantage of that versatility, which is kind of a shame. But we'll see if maybe it's different this year, and maybe he can do a little bit more with Juszczyk and, mix it up with him and take advantage of that skill.
I know he liked to use Juszczyk to in the run, like the short run game, kind of the power run game. JLM did so. But he's really effective out of the backfield as a pass catcher as well. And I know for the 49ers, he lines up in kind of that H-back tight end / fullback role. And pairing that with George Kittle and some heavier formations is really, really dangerous. So obviously, again, we talked about this 49ers roster is really, really loaded with quality players and some strong depth. And the big thing with him probably is going to figure out that cap room. Although he may get a really big relief from that with the Jimmy Garoppolo deal being done, I think, after this first season.
Don't the Niners also have Jordan Reed now?
I don't.
I think they have him and Kittle now.
Let me check. I don't see Jordan Reed. Let me look up their tight ends.
I think I just read where he had signed there.
Okay, so he may not be on the roster yet, but maybe added.
Yeah, he passed his
What kind of
concussion protocol, and he was going to
structure
go
is
there.
this? Oh, it's alphabetical order. I'm trying to find tight end in the this filter, and I couldn't figure it out. Yeah, he's not on the roster right now, but yeah, if Jordan Reed's on that roster too,
I could be wrong.
that would be a big addition.
Cooley is correct. Jordan Reed did just sign with them, so yeah, so he's probably going to be added to the roster here upon release. So yeah, that just makes that team a little bit more dangerous. I mean, wide receiver is the weak point. Prop low, he's an above average NFL quarterback right now as far as I'm concerned. So like he can suffice, but wide receiver is probably the one spot, especially losing Emmanuel Sanders, that they could probably use some additional support in, and where he'll probably need to build a little bit more. And cornerback would probably be the other position off the top of my head looking at it, because Richardson is, like you mentioned, getting up there in age,
Yeah,
and he is the top guy still.
Yeah, there's room to grow within this roster as well, but obviously a roster that's built to compete right away. Space, Priest, y'all have any thoughts about the 49ers?
Yeah, they're going to be tough, just from what all you just said there, in the addition to Reed. But he's going to have to find some kind of receivers, because you can't just use your tight end. That'd be easy to stop.
Right. And plus,
I think that stuff is. Nope.
Yeah, it'll be such a focus. Our team's going to be going nickel a lot against this offense, putting a quarterback on the tight end. They going to try to use safeties, linebackers. The Rams lost Corey Littleton, who was their best coverage linebacker. There's a lot of different factors here against this team. Just from a purely Madden strategy standpoint, that it's going to be very challenging, because you go a nickel and to try to stop Kittle, and you're opening yourself up to Mostert just gashing you in that running game, just taking advantage. So I feel like there's going to be a big cat and mouse game in this division and teams facing the 49ers.
Yeah, just talking about their wide receivers real quick. Debo Samuel's their top-rated wide receiver at 80 overall. They got Dante Pettis, Kendrick Bourne, Travis Benjamin, Trent Taylor, and then Brandon Ayuk, who I believe was their first-round pick this year, wide receiver out of Arizona State, I want to say. 72 overall. So there's a lot of similarly rated guys with speed. They don't have any really top-end speed guys at receiver, but looks like they've got some pretty solid possession catch guys. A lot of mid-80s catching, and then we'll see what the route running and all that stuff looks like. But wide receiver definitely an area that could be improved with this roster. All right. I think that probably wraps up the 49ers. Does anyone else have any final thoughts, final comments about this team?
They're good.
Yeah, they are.
They're good. I think their defense.
I think that pretty much sums it up. Always on point there.
Smace, go ahead. It's kind of cutting in and out. I think it's my internet, but go ahead. I heard you trying to chime in.
Oh no! I just said their defense is going to carry them.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to carry them.
Yeah, I'm not hearing Space either. I think he might be having some difficulty.
I can hear. Yeah, I hear him. I think I think Space is right. The defense is just so loaded at every level, so it's for sure gonna be a tough team to play. It should carry that team to a lot of success early on. All right, so let's wrap up the 49ers with JLM, his second year as the 49ers. Again, a lot of success last year with them. Probably looking to continue that success here. I'm sure a lot of us expect him to be one of the top users in the league yet again. So let's transition now and talk a little bit about the division as a whole. So we've gone through each team. We've talked a little bit about the users for each one. Let's get some expectations, and let's actually start with the one user we have in the division. Priest, you know now who else is in your division, even though you may not know a ton about them, as users. Hearing what we've said, what are your expectations as the Rams owner?
I'm going to compete. I think just from hearing the records, I think the 49ers are going to be my toughest go. But I think everybody will. Just by what you guys said, I think I'll compete.
All right.
Do you think that from like just looking at the cycle as a whole, do you think early on, later, kind of balanced? You're going to try to remain competitive throughout the cycle. When do you kind of looking ahead feel like your optimum time to strike is here?
Well, if I can get that rookie going right away, I need a running back. That's if I have a running back, then I can. My passing game is better than most. But if I don't have a running back, I can't get that going. So hopefully this rookie running back, maybe he does the trick. Then I come out shooting at the beginning, or might have for a trade and get somebody that I want.
Yeah, running backs are like guys like to move running backs around, so you can probably get one for not too much of a price in terms of draft picks. All right, let's go around. Let's talk about our thoughts in the division. Who do we think is going to be most successful? Who do we see having early success? Whoever wants to jump in. Man, I think my internet is really struggling right now.
Mace, you go ahead.
All right. Well, I think the Rams are the most balanced, complete team for both of them. Is going to be a challenge for the other two teams in the division to deal with. So I see the winner of their two games, whoever wins the tiebreaker, may win the division. They may end up with the same record.
Interesting. I think that's we talked about the Rams early on. That's an interesting perspective. I like that. Go ahead, Cooley.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably, I mean, you got the 49ers probably with JLM and his track record. I mean, he's going to be tough. I mean, he wasn't dominant last year. I mean, the Rams really were the best team in that division the whole cycle. I mean, they both were really good, but I mean, if you had to say one was better than the other, the Rams, I think probably won that division more than the Niners did.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they're good, but I don't think it's a crazy leap. And the Cardinals were certainly, you know, the thing you just don't know is the Seahawks had that bad cycle Shiloh did last season, so you kind of think that they're probably the weakest team right now, but they may have uh, the most, you know, they may have a little more I would say 49ers probably for the first couple seasons would be the team to beat.
Man. Hey guys, real quick,
And,
I don't know if
they add a couple of pieces. That's still a really good team. There are a lot of good teams in this division, so kind of interested to see how it'll go.
Yeah, I got to agree with Cooley here. I mean, I think that initially the 49ers, at least for the first season, are going to be the front runner team to beat. But I think the Cardinals, because of their youth, and the Rams, just because of some of those key players they have, the Cooper Kupp, the Jalen Ramsey, the Cam Akers, Jared Goff, potentially having to replace him, but still having the cap room of his contract up here. I think after 2 seasons. So I think that both the Cardinals and the Rams have the potential not too long into the cycle to be right there or past the 49ers in that cycle. And I think, like you mentioned about the Seahawks, they might be the weakest from the start, but Shaw's been known to be able to still build his team, even though, like John mentioned, he's not always able to be as active in the offseason due to the time difference, but he usually by the end of the cycle, he's right there in the thick of things as well. So this is definitely just from a pure roster standpoint, I think one of the best divisions in the league. and we got some good numbers in here to kind of finish it out.
Yeah, I'm looking through. I like to, when we go through this, just have up like the full division ranking, so it just lists the top overall from every team in the division. And this seems to be one of the more balanced divisions, even with as well as the 49ers roster is rated. There's a lot of top end talent on all four teams, um, and pretty good balance throughout. So I don't know, even though I think we all expect the 49ers to be the best team early on, I don't know that they're guaranteed that, because there's a lot of good talent throughout this entire division. So I think it's really going to come down to who figures out the game. We always have this kind of period, the first season or so, where guys are trying to figure out, how their play style works within the game. And I think whoever figures that out quickest is going to kind of jump out to the races. I think the 49ers have a little bit of a built-in advantage because of the depth of the roster, but not as big as I initially thought. I think all four of these rosters are pretty solid, up and down. So let's bring in any final thoughts, and or you want to go to? I guess we should go to predictions. So let's do official predictions. Who do we think will win the division the first season, and who do we think will have the most success moving forward or moving throughout the cycle?
Well, I think I kind of already, mentioned that just what I said before. I think the 49ers at the beginning. I think the Cardinals I want to pick for the most success. I think just because that team has so much young talent that's already set up for long-term success. I think it requires the least amount of tinkering, the least amount of team building, uh, and holes to fill for the cycle as a whole. So I would pick the Cardinals as my long-term most successful team in the division.
All right, let's go to Cooley.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go with the 49ers, just because it's easier to get those impact offensive players. I mean, really, what the Cardinals need probably is a pass rush and some, maybe linebacker. Um, it remains to be seen how important the offensive line will be. You could get by with. It's good to have. It's always been good to have highly rated offensive linemen, but it hadn't been a necessity. But with these pass rush moves, that it may be a necessity. And if you have to spend your drafts on that, then the Cardinals are a tougher rebuild. So probably the Rams, and I'd say the Rams probably are the second, my second pick there. And then, until I just don't have a lot of confidence in the Seahawks right now.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks have the highest road to climb in terms of that roster and building it long term. Actually, looking more at this, man, I really like the Cardinals roster. And I think if, depending on how Big Boy decides to play it, if he gets that offense humming in the first season, I think they can take on the 49ers defense. And it's kind of the two sides have opposite strengths and opposite weaknesses. So I'm going to actually take the Cardinals in the first season. I know that's going to make JLM very happy. I'm going to take the Cardinals in the first season. I'm actually going to take them through the cycle too. I really like the way that roster's built. Brian, as you said, I think it requires the least amount of change to get it successful long term. You flip Patrick Peterson for a first round pick, and you're set up pretty well through the rest of the cycle. So I'm a big Cardinals fan for this division for Madden 21. Do we have any other thoughts, any final thoughts about the NFC West reveal?
No, it's an interesting division. You've got a pass happy team, you've got a defensive team, you've got a run first team. So it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. Got an
Yeah,
older team, a young team.
yeah. There's a lot of variation within these rosters.
And then
That's
you got
kind of got everything.
Yeah, you got mobile quarterbacks, stationary
Yeah,
quarterbacks. So it's going to be interesting.
And different styles, so it'll make it interesting to see kind of how they all decide to build their teams, and like you're playing somebody different every week. It's a different style every time you have to play those teams twice a year. So that'd be a fun division to be in.
All right, so I think we'll leave it with that. This is our NFC West division reveal. So we've gone through all 4 rosters. We made some predictions, and we will be back. Actually, Brian, why don't you? I don't even know what the schedule is. When is the next division reveal?
So we're going to go back, and it's going to be on Tuesday again. So Tuesday, I believe we're going to as close to 10 p.m. Eastern as we can.
Yeah.
And we're going to do another division there, another 4 teams, and continue the reveal. Try to stick with the Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday schedule here until we get all teams revealed. So Tuesday, 10 o'clock Eastern in the evening, obviously. Another 4 teams.
Yeah, that should get us halfway through. I think that would be our 4th division.
Yeah, correct.
All right. Well, I want to thank Brian and Cooley for joining as they have before. Smace jumping in. Really appreciate that. And Priest, thanks for taking the time to join us and talk a little bit about your roster and your decision. So thank you guys for listening. And